I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week, we're going to be looking at the Best Animated Feature category, which should be a lot of fun. I've seen most of these movies, so I can talk about their quality and how they sort of relate to the Oscars race. But if you guys are new to the series, what I do every single week is I break down a different category for the Oscars, and I predict what I think is going to win. Also, at the top of the show, to keep you updated and keep you updated on movies that maybe I covered before, they're sort of changing in my estimation. I do movies that are rising and movies that are falling just at the top of the show. And then occasionally, the last couple of weeks I've been doing what I consider combination episodes, where we sort of do predictions and sort of reactions to certain big events like the Golden Globes or the SAG Awards. That sort of will change how the Oscars landscape will play out. And this week's not that, but we still have a really interesting week, and we're still going to talk about two movies that are rising and falling. A movie that is rising right now, not a lot sort of rising that we haven't sort of talked about in the last couple of weeks, but sort of what I call maybe single nomination movies, but one in particular is Leave No Trace. I think that this is a movie that is really being backed by a lot of these critics groups. Deborah Granick winning Best Director. The picture, Leave No Trace, has actually won Best Picture. And it's at least getting nominated for Best Picture. A lot of people are sort of trying to champion Thomasin McKenzie for Best Supporting Actress, which could very possibly happen just because I think that last slot of either Claire Foy or Margot Robbie or Nicole Kidman, she could slip in there if there's sort of the right amount of campaign, I guess you would say. And then even they're trying to sort of campaign Leave No Trace for adapted screenplay. They're doing a great job sort of going around, really making sure people have seen this movie, making sure this is on the screeners. They have been campaigning. It's going to be one of those maybe sort of indie hits that could sneak in for Best Adapted Screenplay, could maybe beat out something like Black Panther. That being said, if Black Panther is, say, a considerable chance, it's probably not going to get it in, but it could knock out something like Can You Ever Forgive Me, which is maybe not doing as well as I hoped. But yeah, so Best Supporting Actress, possibly Best Picture, but definitely sort of adapted screenplays. Those are the ones where they're trying to sneak in and try to push for where it has really come out of nowhere, but they're really trying to push and get in here and now. And then falling, we're going to have to go with Vice, just because I thought, sort of the initial critical reaction was very positive. People really liked it, those initial social media reactions, and then it's been doing so well at the Globes. It did so well, and at SAG, I just thought, okay, so it's a very good movie. People consider it like a Big Short equivalent. However, the critics that have sort of come out now have been maybe actually more mixed. Some people think it's actually a bad movie, and it's about 65% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. So it's definitely going to be a divisive movie. That just tells me that it's not going to be a Best Picture winner per se. And then maybe sort of temper your expectations for it, even getting for something like Director for Adam McKay, which I currently have in for right now, but I still think it's going to be in for Picture and for Amy Adams and Christian Bale, and could get in for something like Sam Rockwell, although I'm not predicting him as of right now. Okay, let's jump into the first pick for this episode, which is The Incredibles 2. This is just a movie that I think is pretty sure for a nomination, just because of the dual combo of it being highly critically regarded, as well as being one of the highest grossing movies of all of the year. Made over $1 billion, a huge hit. People really love this movie. People are going back and back again, because that's the only way you sort of make $1 billion, is people sort of come back and watch it again and again. And Pixar has always been really great at the Oscars. Maybe there's sort of been a recent trend. We're seeing of Disney Animation doing very well at the Oscars, but Pixar is still the champ. Ever since the category's been created, I believe in 2003, 2002, Pixar has been nominated 11 times, and they've won 9 out of those 11 times. The only 2 times they didn't win was the very first year. I think it was 2003. Shrek beat out Monsters, Inc., and then a couple years later, Happy Feet beat out Cars in 2006, I believe. But aside from that, they've been on a really sort of great streak. Now, the sort of caveat to that is that there has been sort of surprise no nominations, particularly something like Finding Dory didn't get nominated, which was sort of not a big critical hit, but a big box office hit. And then something like Monsters University was a surprise, once again, no nomination. So In terms of nominations, maybe Incredibles 2 is not the number one frontrunner in terms of, there's always a possibility that it won't get nominated, but if it does get nominated, its chances to win are very strong. I think this is because because the Oscars, when it comes to actually voting for the winner, the entire body votes for it, and everyone can vote on every category. Some people don't, but especially for something like animated feature, a lot of people have seen Incredibles 2. So we see a lot of times in these animated feature categories, for winning, not in terms of nominations, but for winning the Oscar, they go for the recognizable name, Pixar, Disney Animation. That's what we've seen over the past few years. And I think a lot of people sort of recognize Pixar with quality, and if they've seen this movie and they haven't seen some of the more smaller ones, they may just vote for it anyways because they enjoy the movie so much. Plus, it's a superhero movie, so that's sort of a recent trend going on right now. But it could sort of get, actually, one last point. The Incredibles, the very first Incredibles, won 2 Oscars for Best Animated Feature and for Best Sound Editing. It even got in for a nomination for Best Screenplay, which was huge for an animated feature at the time. So the Oscars have a good track record for the Incredibles, and Brad Bird's other animated feature film he did with Pixar, Ratatouille, got sort of won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, so he's got a great track record here. Watch out for The Incredibles 2. Okay, and then, like I said, there's another superhero movie that sort of could be the Oscar dark horse, which is Sony Pictures Animation's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I saw this movie, and it's really just an incredibly vibrant and creative and energetic movie. Because so many people have seen superhero movies because they are sort of dominating the industry, this one sort of relies on that and uses sort of collaborators, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who are known for 22 Jump Street and the Lego Movie. They didn't direct this movie, but really Phil Lord co-wrote the movie, they produced the movie. Their hands are all over it with the sort of meta humor that sort of relate to the comic books. I think it's a great movie that if you've seen sort of other Spider-Man movies or just comic book movies in general, you really sort of get a lot out of it. It's got, I think it's still like 100% or 99% Rotten Tomatoes right now. Huge critical hit. Did very well at the box office this past weekend. We're looking at about, I think, $45 million opening, which is great for an animated feature. Especially one that's sort of more low profile than this. The sort of negative aspect would be is that because I don't think the Oscars are necessarily pro superhero as we sort of seen throughout the past, and I think this has a large reliance on seeing other superhero movies. That being said, it's still, like I said, very creative, very unique, very different animated feature film, like almost like a comic book in the way that it's like sort of when you punch a guy, it goes Pam, and his inner dialogue is seen, and sort of the scene transitions, and just the flow, the vibrancy, the energy of the movie. It's incredibly creative. I really enjoyed the movie. But like I said, there's sort of that sort of barrier to entry that I think will hurt its chances. I still think it's going to get nominated, but I think that it has a high barrier to entry, plus Sony Pictures Animations is sort of unknown at the Oscars. I think they got nominated for Pirates, Band of Misfits, and Surf's Up were their only 2 nominations for Best Animated Feature. They've never won. But I think it's sort of late recent surge. It's going to be on top of people's minds. People are going to watch it. It's been a hit. It's a huge critical hit. Very creative, very different. And something like Loving Vincent, which wasn't maybe that great of a movie last year, but was different, was creative, got the nomination. So watch out for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It could be a dark horse. However, my personal dark horse is my third pick, which I could end up putting number 1 for winning, which is Ralph Breaks the Internet. Because as these sort of 2 number 1 and number 2 slots are both superhero movies, they could sort of negate the vote. They could cancel each other out, which would lead, I think, the obvious choice of Ralph Breaks the Internet to slide in here. Like I said at the top of the show, Disney Animation has been doing a fantastic job and have been on a bit of a streak. They won with Frozen, then they won the next year with Big Hero 6, then 2 years later they won with Zootopia. And if you remember, back in 2012, when the first Wreck-It Ralph was released, it sort of surprisingly, it wasn't necessarily the favorite, but it was maybe a majority favorite to win Best Animated Feature. It lost out to Brave, which was a bit of a surprise sort of win for that. And I think that if the Academy wants to sort of redo that, they sort of see that as a mistake. They see, Brave was maybe not that well received. It hasn't sort of held up very well, where, Wreck-It Ralph has done really well on home video sales and toys and merchandise, and now create a sequel that's been doing very well at the box office, and not critically acclaimed, but critically liked. I think it's got like an 80% something like that on Rotten Tomatoes. I really loved it. I thought it was hilarious, and I think that it's directed or co-directed by sort of the Disney man right now, Rich Moore, who did the first Wreck-It Ralph and then got hired on for Zootopia because that film was kind of a mess. Fixed that, steered that ship onto an Oscar. Now he's back with Ralph Breaks the Internet. And sort of if they want to redo that Oscar mistake, you can say it, they're going to go with Ralph Breaks the Internet. Or if those sort of two superhero movies cancel each other out, Ralph Breaks the Internet goes in because, similar to Pixar, with that large voting block, if they see something like Disney animation, they're going to want to vote for it because, you know, it's Disney, it's a recognizable name, their kids maybe liked it, so it definitely could get in because this is a kid-friendly film, but it's also a great family movie. It's a great movie overall. I was a big fan of it, and I hope it gets nominated, and I think it could possibly even win. The fourth slot here goes to Wes Anderson's incredible vision of Isle of Dogs. This was a movie that was really critically acclaimed at the time of release, did pretty well at the box office, and if you remember, Wes Anderson's last film was Grand Budapest Hotel, which nominated for 9 Oscars, won 4, and then his last stop-motion animated film was actually Fantastic Mr. Fox in 2009, which got him an Oscar nomination. Not a win, but that was a very competitive year with a movie like Up, for example, which I think maybe could have won, you know, in a different year. So he's a very well-respected filmmaker, well-liked at the Oscars, and this movie is very unique. It's very much him. He has his own brand of style on it, the idiosyncraticness and the sort of symmetry of the shots, the deadpan dialogue that he's known for, the sort of quirkiness that is sort of synonymous with Wes Anderson, you would say. It's really on display here, and I think that the Oscar voters will really appreciate that sort of creativity, like I said, with Loving Vincent or Spider-Man, that it's different. Plus, I think a lot of people recognize the art of stop-motion animation with something like Kubo and the Two Strings getting nominated before, and other Leica films, sort of like The Box Trolls, which wasn't that good, but you sort of recognize the craft of the actual stop-motion animation, which this one is very tactile. You can feel it. The fur looks amazing, and just there's so many things that he couldn't do in real life, so he does this in animation. You know, and it wasn't sort of a big hit at the box office, but critically liked. The problem and sort of the backlash of it is the backlash. A lot of critics have been abandoning the movie because of sort of certain Asian American critics have pointed out its disregard of its setting of Japan and not really sort of making note of that and sort of maybe disrespecting that in certain ways and being insensitive. You know, whether that's deserved or not is really not the point. The point is that this sort of movement does exist. There is a backlash against this film. And then in a category where these other films are sort of all critically liked and big box office hits, any sort of negatives really hurt a film like this. However, I still think it's going to get nominated because of that creativity. It's also won at a couple film critics, so it's not that big of a deal. I think it won at Atlanta and Dallas film critic circles. It got nominated at the Annie Awards, got nominated at the Golden Globes. So did the other 4, actually. They all got nominated at the Golden Globes and the Annie Awards. So these are sort of precursors that we want to look at. It still got nominated at all the right places. However, I think the sort of lack of massive appeal will hurt the chances as for, you know, a win. But I still expect it to get nominated. And my final pick here is Arai. I feel like we talk about it every year now, but this is the G-Kids effect. This is the G-Kids movie of the year. I didn't know anything about G-Kids before sort of researching about the Oscars, but they have an incredible track record. Essentially what the company does is a lot of times they just, they don't make the movies, but they provide US distribution or North American distribution and really campaign hard on making sure the Oscar voters see these kinds of movies. There are always these great independent animation films with maybe more adult stories or really just sort of not from the States and not these sort of big Hollywood animated movies. They come from other countries. Last year was The Breadwinner, which was their film, which got nominated. Sort of all these critically well-regarded movies from different countries. That was from Ireland, for example, talking about more adult themes and sort of maybe the kiddie aspects of Wreck-It Ralph or The Incredibles or whatnot, that maybe talk about the family and friendship. This is more maybe of a hard theme. This is from Hosoda, who's an incredible sort of Japanese director. He directed Boy and Beast last year. He has not been nominated for an Oscar, but he's sort of well regarded and well seen as sort of an up-and-coming, maybe Miyazaki equivalent, for example. And I think that it has the G-Kids effect to it, where if last year was a Breadwinner, 2 years ago it was My Life as a Zucchini. They've had a sort of a really great track record of at least getting nominated, at least sort of sneaking in there. It sort of did very well and even got nominated at the Golden Globes, which is not really a place for these kind of movies. But with the Oscar voters, that sort of assures me that it got in at the Annies, it got in at the Globes. It ensures me that Oh no, I don't think it got in at the end. I think Early Man beat it out. But it got at the Globes, which was a surprise to me. And I think this is definitely more of the Oscars film. And by the time more people see it, and by the time sort of G-Kids have sort of spread this movie around, I think Arai is a film that people will relate to and sort of be that sort of Oscar-type independent animated feature film that we always see sort of sneaking at that last spot. And then honorable mentions, I have The Grinch in Early Man. Early Man's from Aardman Animation, which has always done pretty well in terms of nominations at the Oscars, but it came out in February. I think people forgot about it. It wasn't that well liked. Similarly with The Grinch, it's been doing actually very well and sort of consistent at the box office because of this Christmas season, but it still hasn't sort of received huge critical response. It's sort of the Grinch story we know and love, and then we sort of forget about it. It could again because of the Christmas love and sort of the Illumination love, although that even could be hit or miss. You know, they get in for maybe Despicable Me, but they don't get in for Minions. So that's a movie that a studio that's maybe less towards the Oscars. So right now I feel very confident at least 4 of those 5 nominations that I think those movies I think will get nominated. I think I'll actually do 5 for 5 because I think there's some big negatives towards these two, but there's not huge negatives towards the other ones. And the other ones have been getting in at a lot of those precursors. Early Man got in at the Annies, but I think that's very sort of a specific animated sort of feature love kind of a movie. But who knows? We'll have to see. Let me know some of your comments down below who your favorite sort of movies that you want to see. Is Isle of Dogs something that you think could maybe surprise? Do you believe in my Ralph Breaks the Internet theory? Or is The Incredibles 2 have this in the bag? Or maybe your Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse Dark Horse is yours. Let me know in the comments down below. I love to hear your thoughts. That's what I'm trying to do, is create this great film community in the comments down below so I can respond and we create a great environment and just talk. That's what I try to achieve with these videos, and as well as trying to keep you guys informed on the Oscars race. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned next week for best documentary predictions. And until next time, stay tuned.